Well, hello MGTOW, welcome back to my truck. Today, I'm not gonna tell you where I am because it's number one, it's somewhat irrelevant, and number two, why give out information, right? Personal information. Anyways, but I do have an interesting topic to talk about today, and I'm gonna talk about. I mean, I wasn't planning on making a video about anything, but the manosphere needs it. It's been pretty quiet out here. A lot of content providers have been, basically they've gone their own way. They've left YouTube behind. They turned their backs on YouTube, and with good reason, right? So there are only a few of us out here producing content, and they're not the bigger channels for the most part. Some of the bigger channels have been also attacked by YouTube, especially with a lot of phantom accounts being created, a lot of fake accounts pretending to be people that they're not. So I'm gonna put this content here because I know there's got to be a guy out there who needs this type of information, who can benefit from not knowing what women are really all about and how the system is screwing them over. Anyways, first I wanna give you guys a story, and then I want to talk a little bit about freedom and how we measure it and how you can have more of it. I may do that in 2 videos, I don't know, but I'm gonna start with a story. It's the story of my very last formal relationship with a woman. So anyways, I met this young girl. I was 30 at the time. 30 I was? Something like that. And she was 10 years younger than me, right? And I was living in a big city then, and I met her on the front steps of the building where I used to live. And so I just basically sat next to her and started chatting, about the day or whatever, whatnot. I had long hair back then. I was really a handsome young man. And but this girl was 30 years. I mean, she was 10 years younger than I. And she was going to school. She was a Christian woman, unlike me. I happened to be an atheist asshole. But she was a Christian woman, which was fine by me. I mean, this is what this country is all about, right? Ideally, it's about religious freedom, political freedom, intellectual freedom, and this idea that we can all live together as long as we respect each other's differences, right? Differences of opinion. That's what freedom is all about. There's no need to act all offended because someone else thinks different than you. So I was okay with that. I said, well, if she thinks that Christianity is something that she benefits from in her life, and then we will not bring up the subject. For my part, I'll try to avoid the subject, and we'll find some common ground regarding other issues. And so we did, and we began this relationship. And hey, I'm the kind of guy. I'm pretty self-reliant. I can fix my car. I can cook. I mean, I had to learn how to cook because I was not willing to eat the crappy food that they would put on the shelves in supermarkets, like all the canned foods and all that stuff. And I was not willing to eat processed foods for the most part. So I wanted to be as healthy as possible, and so I had to learn how to cook. And I taught myself how to cook little by little, and so I'm a decent cook. So I would cook for her. I would keep my car in tip-top shape. Eventually, I ended up taking care of this woman. Right? She was a young lady, beautiful, beautiful African American woman. So we were an interracial couple, and that was fine by me too. I mean, I have no problem. I love women of all kinds, all kinds. It didn't matter to me. I found her attractive, and we began dating. And so, but she lived with her mother, and I lived by myself in the same building. And eventually, I mean, I let her know from the very beginning. I wasn't officially MGTOW by then, because MGTOW wasn't even a thing, or it might have been a thing, but I was not aware of it. In my mind, I had other things. I knew that this so-called manosphere, right, was composed of people with many different beliefs regarding women, and anybody from the pimps to the pickup artists, to the speed seducers, to the to the monks. But I did not know that this group called MGTOW existed. And I had a good paying job back then. I have a decent paying job now, but I had a good paying job, and I was making cash on the side. And anyways, I had my own place in this building next to her, almost next to her, like a couple of doors down in the building. And but from the very beginning, I told her, listen, if we're gonna start a relationship, I think we may as well be clear on what my standards are, right? So that there are no expectations, unrealistic expectations in the future as to what is about to happen. So I told her, I've been married before, and this is what I told her. Whether it was real or not, it didn't matter. But this is what I told her. I was married before, and they didn't know me that well. So I was like, I don't want any kids, no kids. And it'll be good for you because you can finish going to school. And she was an English major. She was majoring in English, which I thought was an honorable degree to get. There are a lot of women out there now. They don't, they're going for worse degrees. So English. I had a very good English teacher and a couple of very good English. Excuse me for a second while I fix the camera, guys. I had a couple of good English teachers in high school, and let me tell you, they were really, really smart. These men. They majored in English, and they really loved the language. They really loved literature, and they really loved learning, and their passion was contagious to the students. And so I thought, well, she's going to major in English. And indeed, she seemed like a very intelligent woman to me at the time. And I did not consider that an oxymoron. She delved into the the literature of Dante, right? Dante's Inferno and all that other stuff. Anyways, very smart, very beautiful young lady. But I told her, you cannot move in with me, and we're not gonna have children. So lo and behold, we started dating, and the relationship was great. I thought it was great. But as time progressed, I discovered, number one, her mother did not, take well to me being around her younger daughter. Back then, I didn't see that as a sign of jealousy, but it might have been possible that her mother envied her, right? Or felt inferior to her daughter because her daughter was, able to attract a man of my age, right? Perhaps the kind of man that her mother would have desired for herself. And so her mother did everything possible to sabotage the relationship, right? But I'm an adult and I was self-reliant. I mean, I wasn't living in their place. They were, they were living together and I was living in mine. And anyways, about 18 months went by in the relationship, and this young woman, who shall remain unnamed, began to do strange things in order to get pregnant. Right? I thought I was pretty sure she wanted to get pregnant, and like holding me off when I was trying to use protection, and all this other stuff. So I started to question her actions, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, I don't want kids with this woman. I thought I was still relatively young, and I wanted somewhat of a better future for myself. Right? I wanted my work to be I wanted to benefit from the fruit of my labor, right? And I instinctively knew that if I had a child with this woman, or two, that the game would pretty much be over. Even though she was very beautiful and I loved her, I felt as though at the time it was a healthy relationship. She did not abuse me, and I felt as though I was at times, yes, kind of babysitting her, but most of the time I felt as though we had a real connection, and I was really attracted to her. But I was not willing to have kids, and I'm not willing to have kids now. And I will. Chances are I will remain this way until the end of my days. So that was one thing, right? She every time she saw a baby, being pushed on a stroller by another woman, she would go, "Oh my God, oh, how cute, the baby." So basically insinuating, or at least hinting to the fact that maybe in the future, I would change my way of thinking and have a baby with her. And quite frankly, I did not see myself having a family with her or any other woman, for that matter. So that was one thing. The other thing was her mother. And then finally, what caused me to end the relationship abruptly were two things. Number one, her work ethic just was not there, right? Her work ethic was lacking altogether. Like there was no haste in her wanting to get a job, despite the conditions in which she lived under her mother's tutelage and care. No ambition for the future other than getting her college degree, which was okay, but there was no talk of her working hard and maybe purchasing a home together with me, or something to that effect. So there was no ambition of any kind, no work ethic. But the thing that really broke the camel's back, the thing that caused me to, and I must admit painfully, it caused me to painfully walk away from her, to painfully end the relationship with her at the time, was that one night she knocked on my door and she said to me, in a desperate voice, my mother just kicked me out. And I said to myself, geez, this woman is either pulling a move so she can move into my place, or she's really being kicked out of her mother's house. But up to this point, I mean, I've been telling her she has to get a job for herself, not for me. So up to that point, we've been talking about, she has to get a job for herself, not for me, so she can get out of her mother's house and get an apartment or something, And so I told her, listen, honey, we've talked about this over and over many times. You know what my expectations are regarding our relationship. You know what we've talked about since the very beginning. I do love you, but you're not gonna move in with me. I know this is a surprising thing. I cannot have you move in here with me. You can stay the night, just like you've done on several occasions, and that'll be that. And so tomorrow you got to figure out what you're gonna do with your mother, or or you got to move somewhere else. And that was that. That was basically the end of the relationship. The relationship ended abruptly like that. Why? Because at that time I thought it unfair that I should continue to have sex with her while she was going through all these troubles, right, with her mother, and maybe even being homeless or whatnot. And I wasn't going to help her, right? I thought that I felt somewhat. It didn't feel right to me, right, to have a homeless girlfriend that was having all kinds of problems, especially because of the way in which she completely lacked a work ethic and a financial stability or whatnot. So we weren't in par. We were not equal when it came to financial stability. And so I told her that was the end of it. That was the end of it. Because even if she fixed her situation, she knew that she could no longer rely on me for anything, or she could not rely on me for any sort of financial gain, financial stability. And so in a way, she brought this to herself, right? But it bothered me at the time. It really did, because I did not foresee the relationship ending this way. And part of me wanted still to be with her and not, go through the withdrawal symptoms that I did when we parted ways. So, anyways, that was the story. But I held my ground, and about 2 years later, I want to say about a year and a half, 2 years later, I saw her again. And that beautiful woman that I had shared some wonderful moments of intimacy with, the woman who I had shared some nice conversations with. I mean, we had gone to see in the movies. I had cooked beautiful meals for her, healthy meals. We sat down, we ate together. When it was snowing outside, we cuddled under the blankets or whatnot. It was a beautiful thing. But 2 years later, after we had finished, we had ended the relationship, I saw her with her sister, and she was carrying a child with her. And I saw the kid, and I was like, oh. I'm like, I knew the kid could not be mine because it was a rather small kid, very small child. But by then she had 6 tattoos, and she had, one of them very large on her thigh, on her right thigh. and she was carrying this beautiful Hispanic-looking kid, and I said to myself, that kid looks like me. That kid looks so much like me. That kid could be my son. You know, it was a boy. And anyways, this video kind of cut me off. So, anyways, yeah. So I said, this kid looks like me so much. You know, I didn't know about microchimerism and all that other stuff. You know, the residue of genetic material that's left by one man in a woman's vagina. You know, and how her kid can end up looking like the ex-boyfriend or whatnot. I didn't know any of that, you know, until I discovered MGTOW. I wasn't even MGTOW still, but that kid looked like me, and I said, "Wow, that kid can be my son." I said to myself. I loved the kid instantaneously. I saw it as almost as my own, even though I knew that the kid was not mine. But anyways, to make a long story short, she was destroyed. She found a man that was a thug, a bad boy. I guess in her eyes, maybe I was the high value, better provider that could have, impregnated her and taken care of her for the rest of her life. But after me, she found a bad boy, maybe an alpha male. I don't know. I never met the guy. But for sure, the guy was handsome because the kid was handsome. And she was I want to say she was a beautiful woman. She's no longer beautiful with all those tattoos and her marijuana stench. And yeah, that's the story, guys. But I say this because I want to tell you, young guys out there, you gotta hold your ground. You gotta hold your ground. If I had stayed with her, I mean, she ended up living in a housing project, not a few blocks away from the nice apartment building where we used to live, right? She ended up living there with that boy, with her son. I don't know if she was living there with the baby daddy or whatnot. But you gotta hold your ground. You gotta hold your ground, young man. You gotta do that, because these women, they will, their lack of work ethic, their lack of character, their lack of ambition, their lack of dreaming will keep you back. If you're the kind of guy that's driven, the kind of guy that wants to make things happen for yourself, you got to take care of yourself in such a way as to not admit any parasitic people in your lives. And parasites many times come with a smile on their faces, right? They're not always mean people. They're just people that are, that find it necessary to leech off of it, right? To subtract or to withdraw resources from them, to obtain resources from them, whether it's time, money, attention, or you name it. So you got to protect yourselves out there. Stay MGTOW, and say no to having kids unless you are ready for it. Say absolutely not to living with a woman unless you want to go under the yoke of this manipulative and controlling government. Just say no. Say no to marriage. Say no to allowing her to move in with you, to leaving her stuff at your house. Say no to all that. No marriage, no cohabitation, no kids. Everything else goes. Thank you, MGTOW.